Hi everybody, Chris Pies here with another classroom for PCA sim racing. This week we are going to tackle a track that is close to a lot of PCA sim racers' hearts, and close to a lot of club racers' hearts, which is Summit Point in West Virginia. This is a track that is known on the PCA club racing schedule for hosting. I think they host a race every year and have been doing it for decades at this point. So, really well known for folks that are up in the Northeast, and the fact that we have the opportunity to race it in iRacing is pretty special. It also invites a lot of close fighting on the racetrack, and then also enables for some really good racing. There's some quirks to this track. It is not smooth; it's quite bumpy. The factor that it, or Because of the fact that it was built so long ago, it has some of those club racing track tendencies like Road Atlanta, Mid Ohio. They're very similar to this. In addition, in the 992 Cup, this track is very short, or one of the shorter ones, meaning that lap times are going to be just over a minute long, which means that we're probably going to end up seeing traffic towards the end of our hour-long races. So without further ado, let's go ahead and launch into the track walk for Summit Point and see what we can learn. So here we are, getting ready for the track walk at Summit Point. One of the things that I am trying to add is a little bit of telemetry, so we can look and kind of dive in a little bit more to what is going on with pedals and steering input through corners. So you'll have to bear with me a little bit, but I have a button that I can pop up that will give me telemetry in certain corners, and we can kind of discuss it after we look at it visually through the replay. So with that, let's go ahead and get this party started. Coming up into coming out of the last corner onto the front stretch, we'll talk about the last corner at the end of the lap. But it is crucial to get a good launch coming out of the last corner. It is effectively the most important corner on the track. Down the front straight at Summit Point is a pretty narrow track, and so the front straight is no exception. While you have two lanes, sometimes you'll find yourself going three wide with cars because of the difficulty the final corner is. So some people will get that wrong. Some people will get really good runs coming through there, and it can lead into drafting situations and side-by-side action going into turn one. It's designed that way. So make sure that you're aware of what cars that are around you. If somebody is going to make a move on you, or you can predict it, either defend adequately going into this corner ahead of time, so make it known what your intentions are, or if there's no one around you, take your ideal line. So coming up to the set of cones for braking, we have really good visuals of brake markers coming into turn one. The set of cones on the left are good initial markers, but sometimes every once in a while somebody will take them out on accident, and therefore they can change. So make sure that if you're relying on those cones, you have a secondary backup in case somebody wipes those cones out, or you're off center and there's a car blocking them, so you have a good indication of where you want to brake. Thankfully, on the track itself, there are some white markers that will never move, and they're in line with the cone, so you can use those markers as a good indicator of where you want to start your brake point. Braking is dependent on a number of factors: tire wear, track conditions, etc., and how aggressive you want to go into the corner. So I'll give you a guideline of where I was finding that I was braking in the current conditions that I did this track walk. But please understand that if the track is hotter, it's going to be a longer brake zone. If the track is cooler or more rubbered in, you may get away with braking a little bit later. So on this particular lap, I was braking right about halfway between the second set of cones and the first set of cones. They're both 4 cones, which is kind of annoying, but just between the first two markers is a really good place to start your braking. I don't brake all the way on track left because that little edge out here, this little shoulder, will disappear and turn into grass. Also, I find that right along the left edge is pretty bumpy, and if you're not ready for it, if you grab any grass under the heavy braking zone, you're going to be in a very, very bad state on the car. You're going to lose control. So I give myself a little bit buffer, and I aim my car from this angle towards the left to try to open up turn one. The idea for turn one is there's multiple lines through here. It's possible to go too wide through here. It's possible to take a really late single apex through here. You can take a double apex if you want. The choice is kind of yours. I find that in the Cup car, it doesn't turn as well as some other cars in racing. So what we like to do is get our turning done as soon as possible and get it done in one motion rather than a large arc. So to the extent that we can get this thing rotated in a relatively quick manner and get it pointed in the right direction and get back on the gas, gives us a pretty good squirt coming out of corners. So coming down into turn 1, hard threshold braking. We are on the edge of the brakes without locking up. We want to get all of our speed scrubbed before we start our turn in. And our turn in for me is basically once we get to the front of or get close to this access road over here, we're going to start dipping it in. In addition, we have a little bit of a filler here in turn 1 where the track, or this particular scan of the track, has filled some concrete in on a heavily used section of the road. And it's heavily used for a reason. That's where people tend to drive when they're racing on this track. So let's use it to our advantage. It's a really good visual cue of what we can do or how we can take this line through this corner. So I am taking the single apex, late apex point, and I'm following this concrete patch through here. So I'm basically driving right along it with the idea of getting to the apex around the candy stripe curbing. So as we go through here, there's my single apex. You can see how late in the curbing it is. Again, following the concrete filler that we've got here, keeping my left side tires on it, but getting my right side tires as close to the curbing as I can. We have to be patient through this corner. If we get on the power too early, the front end of the car will just wash out and we'll start understeering out to the edge of the track. If you get to throttle too early, you'll notice your car start running wide of the concrete filler and you'll notice yourself starting to flirt with the grass on the outside. I don't like to run this corner wide at all. It adds distance traveled, frankly. If we can keep it tight for as long as possible and delay our throttle input, we travel a shorter distance. So while we may not have as high a mile per hour difference as somebody that gets on throttle a little bit earlier and runs really wide on exit, we make that up because we're keeping it short. We also protect the inside from attack as well if we keep it nice and tight all the way through the back end and accelerate and don't go past about mid-track on the way through. So coming through here, you can see I'm keeping it nice and tight, staying in the right-hand lane because the next part of this track is all right-handers, and so I'm just trying to minimize the distance traveled. There is a pretty nasty bump here coming out of turn 1 that I want to talk about real quick. It can really unsettle your car, and you have to be ready for it. It always exists, and it's right about here. So right at this point right here, the car will compress because there is a bump. So you already have pretty good steering angle in the car. Car rear end is going to compress because you're going to hit that bump, and it's right where you're trying to add throttle. And if you add too much throttle, the car will compress in the rear when it hits the bump. When it finishes its compression, it's going to rebound and jump up. If you have too much throttle in the car, when the car jumps up, it's going to have no traction on the rear. You've got steering angle, and you'll spin up your rear tires, and you'll get oversteer and probably spin if you're not careful. So it's very crucial to be very ginger with your throttle application, not only in turn 1, but throughout this entire track, as it is not smooth. It is very bumpy, and those undulations and those bumps can really upset your car if you're trying to add throttle coming out of a corner too early and you're ignoring all traction. The only way you can hit this bump under full throttle is have less steering angle. Too much steering angle, car is going to basically bounce out, and you're going to light up those rears and you're going to spin. So let's back it up and see what it looks like if I don't stop it every single time. And then we'll take a look at the telemetry. So coming in, brake, hard brake, go all the way down to second gear. Turn in, follow the concrete seam, late apex on the candy stripe curbing. Be patient with the throttle, keep the car tucked in. We're adding throttle, and then as we're coming out, boom, full throttle, and following it around. What does that look in telemetry? Boom, let's see what it looks like. So this is turn 1 on telemetry. I'm using VRS data, or VRS, this web app, to show what this particular lap looked like on telemetry. So as I was coming in, the way to look at this is, here is the throttle trace right here. Here is the brake trace, and this is my steering angle. So the big thing you want to see here through most of these is, in a traditional corner like this, is you want to hit your maximum brake pressure right at the beginning. So when you hit that pedal, when you go to that pedal, it should be not quite a vertical straight line, but a pretty aggressive straight line to maximum brake pressure. And then from that point, you shall be releasing your brake all the way through the corner as you're trying to get down there. That's trail braking. Unless the corner dictates, or it's a really funky set of corners, on a traditional one corner turn, you're basically going to hit that pedal, and then that will be your maximum pressure, and from that point forth it will only get less and less as your bleeding breaks off. Throttle should be the same way. Obviously, when you come off the throttle pedal, you should hop off it pretty quickly. If you're left foot braking, there may be a little bit of crossover. It's not the end of the world. Some people say that you should probably not touch either pedal. You shouldn't have them cross over each other. Probably pretty good for endurance racing, because that's just added fuel you're burning if you're pressing both pedals at the same time. But for sprint racing, it's not the end of the world. If you're really concerned about crossover, right foot brake, and you can't have any crossover between the pedals. The second thing that I will add is, when you look at the telemetry, as I was describing, the steering angle that we have here, notice that as the brakes get less and less and less, the steering angle starts feeding in. I don't have steering angle up here when I'm using a lot of brakes, but only when I'm starting to bleed off the brake. So remember the traction circle. There's only so much grip that a tire has or a car has at any given time. If you're doing threshold braking, you're asking 100% of the tire's grip to slow the car down. If you try to insert some lateral request or lateral grip, the tires aren't going to be able to do it, because you're going to be outside that traction circle. But as you ease off the brakes, you're allowing the tires to recover and allow them to do something else other than just braking. So what do? As we bleed off the brakes, we start adding lateral input, which asks the tires to give us lateral grip in addition to braking, and that's the trail braking. So this is what it looks like. You're trail braking down, and we're steering, or we're starting to initiate our steer as we bleed off the brakes. The more and more we bleed off the brakes, the more and more we can add our steering. So that's what's happening here. Early on, we still have a decent amount of brake and very little steering. As we get closer and closer to zero brake, that's where we start to get to our maximum steering. And when we get to the final point right here, where we have no brakes, notice this is our maximum steering point. And that's the idea. You're following that traction circle around. So let's go to corner 2. So if we've successfully navigated turn 1, we've got a little bit of a breather coming into turn 2. Turn 2 is this little kink right here. No big deal. Flat out in the cup car. The main goal is to set up for turn 3. And turn 3, in my opinion, is the most difficult corner on this track. Turn 3 is this fast sweeping left-hander. It's somewhat blind. It goes up and tabletops at the top. When you want the most grip, it goes away. Not to mention the exit of turn 3 is a bit awkward, frankly. You expect it to have a little bit of run out, but it kind of like increases its radius. So it's like a bit of a sweeper with a decreasing radius. I said increasing, a little bit of a decreasing radius on the exit. So we need to be cognizant that as we come through this corner, the exit is going to feel like it jumps up on us and sneaks up on us pretty quick. So as we're coming in, what I like to use as a marker is this little access road over here on the right. You've got some really good clean brake markers here. They're not in the traditional sense. So you've got the end of this shoulder concrete patch. You've got the grass itself, and then you've got the service road. You can use any of these as reliable brake markers. So if the track is hot and doesn't have a lot of grip and you want to be braking early, you could be braking at the end of the shoulder. If you want to be braking a little bit later, or maybe what I would call an aggressive, not an aggressive brake, but just a typical braking point, halfway into the grass. And then if you want to be super aggressive, you could be braking down here at the service road. It's going to be, you're going to be turning the car while you hit this brake pedal. So you can't go into a really hard brake, and you don't really want to either, because the goal of the entry for this corner is to keep the platform stable. If we stand the car on the nose under braking, like we did in turn one, the rear is going to be really light, and it's going to take some time to get everything settled for the fast left-hander, and the car is going to be all out of sorts. We do need to slow the car down to make the corner, and we also need to load the front tires to help us with a good turn in. But past getting the front tires loaded and slowing the car down enough, we want to keep that platform as stable as possible. So quick initial brake and then a quick bleed off to try to get the car platform as stable as possible. On this particular lap, I'm braking just pretty much at the grass, so the front of my car is when the grass starts to tuck into the access road. And then the line is keep it all the way as far to the right as possible. Be careful not to take too much grass. I touched it a little bit on the entry. That can send your car spinning, but understand that we need to take as wide an arc as possible for this turn. Because it is a sweeper, we're going to have a traditional apex on the left curb, the left candy stripe curb, but we need to get off the brakes and roll our momentum and get on throttle as soon as we can. The problem is while we can see a lot of the track here, through the corner the track disappears, so that's where the grip is going to start to disappear on track exit. So decent amount of grip for turn in, which helps us with our turn in, but then as soon as we get to apex and later, it's going to start to disappear and the car is going to want to start to track out and understeer out. In terms of do you hit the curb, do you not hit the curb, it kind of just depends on the line. You need to have some adaptability here. It's already a bit bumpy on entry. It doesn't help, or it's exasperated by getting up on this curb. The car is fully loaded on the right side tires. Getting up on the curb is not going to necessarily upset the balance of the car, but it will give you a little bit of steering or a little bit of play in the steering wheel. If you are not ready for it and you just keep the thing pinned, when you go over that curb, you can get the rear tires to break loose and spin. So be careful with the curbing here. I don't like to take too much of it, maybe about that at most. Keeping it clean versus taking the curbing, I haven't really found too much of a difference. If you touch this curbing, while it may help you help the car turn at that brief moment where the impact occurs, it does push you out as well. So it's kind of a net zero in terms of loss. The thing I do like about the curbing is it does seem to widen the arc a little bit, whereas if you take it without curbing, it's a little bit of a narrower turn, so there may be a difference in speed there. But it's very difficult to get it perfect every single time through this high-speed sweeper. It's kind of wherever the car ends up. If you hit the curbing, you hit the curbing, be ready for it. If you don't, you don't, and you can add throttle sooner or maintain it a little bit more. As we come through and we get to this tabletop, you see how the track kind of just falls off, and then it just, all of a sudden, it's gravel. We do not want to touch this gravel with the way iRacing changed their gravel physics and such. Even dipping a tire into that gravel at all will slow the car down and will cost you time coming out. Not to mention the 1X is pretty aggressive here. Anything more than just a slight nibble of the gravel is going to give you a 1X. So try to keep it clean. Right side tires on the candy stripe curbing, don't go and touch the gravel, and you should be good. This is a fourth gear turn. So let's go back and see what it looks like without me starting and stopping. There we go. So coming up, we're going to brake at the grass, keep it nice and wide, downshift to fourth gear, tuck it in, off the brakes, back on the throttle, settle that rear, get a good run out, don't touch the gravel, and don't run wide on the exit. If we look at the telemetry of this, it's kind of exactly what I was saying before in terms of the braking. It is a quick initial bite of brake. So right here, as you can see, a quick initial bite of braking and then quickly trailing off. So as we have this initial bite of braking, our steering is just starting to begin, and then as we start getting off the brake, we start adding more and more steering. They're kind of together. When we get on throttle towards the end, notice it's a progressive throttle. There's a little bit of a pause. This pause is because of the curbing that I touched on the inside, just to make sure that I've still got grip to handle the throttle, and then boom, full throttle coming out of the corner. All right, coming into turn 4 and down into turn 5. Tricky little set of corners. Really depends on the amount of grip and the track condition. I was finding that you can't take it full throttle. Don't even try. My best results were as I turned in, I was just lifting off the throttle and kind of coasting through turn 4, and then trying to set the car up about mid-track to take turn 5. This is a really good passing opportunity, and you can catch people napping through here. But at this point, I am off the throttle. A little bit of brake if I need to, not much. It's just to kind of keep the nose engaged and give me some traction on the front so the car will actually turn in and won't understeer. And then as soon as I come out of turn 4, depending on where the car ends up based on the speed, it's very quickly to get on the throttle. So trying to get this thing as straight as possible to get on the throttle, that's the tricky part. If it takes a while to get the car straight to get on the throttle, you're going to run out of track on the all the way down to the bottom. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that essentially when we get through this corner, we have the ability to stabilize the car and confidence to get on the brakes and threshold brake in the time that we need before the corner comes up. First lap, for instance, when the tires are cold, probably not a good idea to bomb it into here thinking that you're going to get it slowed up before turn 5. Tires are cold, you lock a tire, and you're going to go all the way through this corner, and you're probably going to take out people in front of you that did it properly. Be very careful to not do that. There's no shame in scrubbing a little bit of speed. Notice how on this particular lap, and this is a hot lap, so this is like me trying to qualify, I'm off the throttle here. I'm off the throttle, a little bit of braking, and then boom, hard brake. And when I say hard brake, it's not mashing the pedal. It's hard braking for the amount of traction the car has. I'm still steering the car, but I've added brake and steering, so there's only so much I can put into the car without locking up. I can't go to 80% brake pressure because the front tires are just going to lock. So it's knowing where that limit is and what the car can do. That's what I mean by hard braking. It's the threshold of what the car can physically do at that point. And I'll show you the telemetry, and you can see what this kind of madness looks like here in a second. But if we get it done properly, we'll get the car slowed. You don't have to be all the way to the right side on this particular corner. In fact, it's probably a detriment because you've overslowed turn 4. Mid-track is fine to the extent that we can move the car over to the right. It helps set up 4, but it's not the end of the world. You can still be over here on the left side of the track and take turn 4 just fine, although you'll have a little bit less speed than somebody else. Turn 4 is turn in, and I like to think of it as a carousel. We have a little bit of that concrete seam like in turn 1. Follow the concrete seam. It's there for a reason. Right side tires in the concrete seam. Keep your left side tires as close to the curbing as possible. If you get up on the curbing, it could help turn the car a little bit, but understand that if you're on it too long, it's going to end up pushing you out as well. So I like to get down, nibble it a little bit to help get the rotation right there at the mid part. And then on exit, follow the concrete curbing. The goal is, as we come out of turn 5, we want to be able to get on throttle in second gear to give us a little squirt before turn 6, the right-hander. So let's go back to turn 4. And let me show you what this telemetry looks like. So turn 4, as you can say, as I said, it's a bit of a mess when it comes to braking, but that's the point of this little section of corners. So the initial braking point, remember this is a graph. This is not like 100% is not the top. This is a graph. So this initial little brake point on the entry or about mid corner is only like 20% brake. That's nothing. So this is entry into turn 4, just a little bit of a brake, sitting around just under 20%, going down to 10% at around apex. And then when the car straightens out, here's the steering wheel. When the car finally straightens out and has more to give, as I start to straighten the wheel, I start adding the braking, feeling where the grip is. It's bumpy. You can't just mash it and just sit on it because the track and it's the way it is. As you bump over, if you keep the same brake pressure, you're going to lock a tire as it goes over a bump, let's say. So manipulating it as the car feels where you feel the grip. And then as you get into the corner, as always, trail braking in and adding steering angle as we come off the brake into turn 5. off, brake, turn in, off the brake, roll the speed through, accelerate. Okay, so now coming into turn 6, the right-hander. This begins kind of the really complicated part of Summit Point, and it's really fun, but it's difficult. The whole point of this 6, 7, 8, 9 complex is turn 9. Nothing else matters. So all you're trying to do is get through everything before turn 9 and set up for turn 9 so you can get a good run coming out of the corner. So everything is pretty much throwaways. So coming into this first part of the corner, just keep it tight. We got another concrete seam. We know from previous experience that's where people drive. Drive on the concrete seam, left side tires. Treat it like another mini carousel coming through here. Nice and tight. The temptation here on the exit is to let the car run wide because that's what we know to do in racing. We apex and then we track out. The track out point on this set of corners between 6 and 7, I don't like going all the way out to the candy stripe curbing. You don't need to. You're going to have to tuck the car in. If we keep driving all the way over to the left, we're physically driving the car over there. So we're adding distance for not a lot of gain for the setup for turn 7. We can get that same setup from mid-track. I like to basically think of it as keeping the same steering angle through 6 and 7. So as we've turned in for 6, we kind of just hold that steering angle, manipulating a little bit, and it will set us up for turn 7. We'll do a little short shift in between the two right here, and then the car will just tuck in, keep it nice and tight, and try as hard as we can, and it's very difficult in this car, to get the car as far to the right as possible to set up for turn 8, because turn 8 is going to be another throwaway where we keep the car as left as possible on exit, not track out, so we can ultimately set up for turn 9. So all of these keep the corners tight and keep them pinched to the right side or the left side, so not track out, is to set up for the ultimate turn 8 entry into turn 9. So as we set up here, we're wide here so we can pinch off turn 8, keep it nice and tight to the left so we can set up and get this sight picture to go through the fast right-hander at turn 9. All of these turns in this section at Summit Point are building on them. Are building on each other, building on speed. So the first corner, turn 6, is the slowest out of all of them. In fact, I think it's the slowest corner on the course. Maybe it's turn 5, but one of those is the slowest. So that's the slowest in the section. Turn 6 is a little bit faster, turn 7 is a little bit faster, and then turn 8 is the fastest out of all of them. If you go through turn 8 and you take it like a traditional corner car and you end up over here mid-track or right of the middle line, all of a sudden you've got a really bad angle and you've got to overslow the car coming in through turn 9. So that's why we want to pinch 8, keep it all the way to the left, 8's a throwaway to set up for the fast right-hander in 9. So let's go back, see what that looks like without me not yapping, but I'll always yap, but not me stopping and starting. Okay, so coming into turn 6, get down to the curbing, follow the concrete around. Steering angle is going to be very similar all the way through here, so I'm just holding it around 90 degrees. Holding it, manipulating the throttle to steer the car more than anything. Keep it nice and tight so we can set up for turn 8. Keep that nice and tight. We're in 3rd gear through here. Shift to 4th, and then get a good run. Kiss the candy stripe curbing and get on throttle as soon as we can coming through the exit. There is a short shift in here for 3rd, as I had alluded to before. My short shift into 3rd is right here. So I am short shifting into 3rd right here, or somewhere between 6 and 7, right there. Short shift to 3rd, because I don't need all the torque. I'm not going to be effectively using full throttle. If I am, it's very, very quickly. So what does the telemetry look like for these corners? Well, let's look at turn 6 and 7 first. So this is, let me back it up to turn 6 and 7. So the start of this telemetry is right here. So with the throttle, you can see I had a little bit of squeeze of full throttle between 5 and 6. Off the throttle, a good bit of brake to slow the car down, and then maintaining brake to get the front end of the car to tuck in. And then since we're going so slowly, we can actually have a decent amount of steering angle. We got to get that front end to tuck in. As you can see on the screen, we've got camber close to the candy stripe curbing. Use it. Keep it nice and tight. And then when we start to pick up throttle, as I said, look at my steering angle. My steering angle all through this section between 6 and 7 is almost identical. It doesn't really move very much. It's just staying at about, what is that? At about 57 or probably 70 degrees. So almost 90, 70 degrees through here with very, very little modulation, right? My modulation is my accelerator. As you accelerate, the car is going to understeer and it's going to go take a wider arc. As you let off the gas, it's going to tuck in and take a narrower arc. So while we're using the steering wheel and holding it there, we're using the throttle pedal to actually steer the car around the corner between those sections. So that's what this is. This is throttle manipulation to help control the line of the car between 6 and 7. So I'm steering up here. So this is almost like the steering angle, frankly. And this is the consistent part, which is a little backwards, or makes you think it's a little backwards, right? But that's the fast way through there. And then if we can get through that and we go into the next set and turn 8 and 9. So this is setting up for turn 8 over here on the left. It's kind of more of the same, right? So my throttle pedal is, I'm very rarely on full throttle through here. There's a little bit of a squirt of full throttle, which is pretty much right where the car is on screen, through this section right here. So we have a little bit of a squirt in third gear between the two. But then we're immediately off the throttle and then manipulating it to get to where we want. I'm not braking at all through here. It's just coasting. It's just using the throttle to manipulate the car. No need to touch the brakes, so I'm just coasting off the brakes through here. Keep it simple. Just use the throttle to manipulate your line and how you want to handle it. Steering is a little bit more involved here, obviously, because we're changing angles going from one side to the other. So between steering and throttle, all this section is throttle control. Keep your throttle under taps and keep it under wraps. If you're having difficulty through this section, dial it back. Don't be as aggressive with the throttle. Try to carry more speed without using the throttle pedal. So go in a little quicker, but don't use the throttle. Where people tend to get in trouble is they overslow the car. They have a point where they feel like they can get to full throttle and they just mash the throttle. And this thing has 505 horsepower and no traction control. You can light up those rear Michelins and spin this thing really quickly through here, especially if you have a lot of steering angle. So roll the speed through, nice smooth throttle inputs, nothing brash, nothing aggressive. Look at my throttle inputs. Everything is very, very slow. I mean, look at the slow adding and removing of throttle between 7 and 8. And that section is right here. So at this point right here, I will lift off the throttle. So we're right here. So I will lift off the throttle nice and gradually go to about 50% while the car tucks in, and then add throttle coming through. So coming through here, off, and then boom, back on. All right, coming up to what is objectively the most important corner on the track and one of the most fun corners on the track, frankly, is this fast right-hand sweeper, the final corner. You have to get it right. If you don't get it right, you are going to suffer all the way down the long straightaway and get past. If you get it right and you're faster than your competitors, you will make passes going into turn 1. So important to get this corner right. And it is difficult because there's not a lot of braking markers. I like to use the pit lane entry as my braking marker. So we've got a couple of points here. We've got an actual physical point right here where you can see my cursor. It actually juts in. Then we got a little bit of a straight, and then we got another physical point, and then we have pit lane itself. I like to use basically this flat spot right here, this straight edge, as my brake marker. So it's out the corner of my eye. As I cross there, as you can see right here, when the car is about what I think is about even, that's when I start fiddling on the brakes. It's a pretty aggressive brake pedal. We got to get the car slowed down enough, but we need to get off the pedal pretty quickly too. We're going to get all the way to the outside of the track, as close to as we can to the left side before the final turn in. As we turn in, we'll bleed off the brakes, so we'll do a little bit of a trail brake, but we're going to try to focus on getting off the brakes as fast as possible. Not as fast as possible, but as early as possible. We don't want to scrub too much speed here. Overslowing the car on entry is just as bad as overslowing it at apex. We have to maintain the momentum coming into this corner so we don't have to make that momentum up on the exit. We already have it. So getting off the brakes is critical through here. Turn in, As we have turned in, we start feeding on the throttle early. So you can actually see it at this point, I've already picked up the throttle. So I'm pretty much off the brakes, and I've already started to accelerate through this corner. So it's a little bit of maintenance throttle, but my idea is I want to accelerate through this corner. I'm in 4th gear. Coming through here, we're going to apex right at the candy stripe curbing where a traditional apex would be, right at the midpoint. And look how much throttle I've got in the car. I'm sitting at about 70-80% throttle coming through here. And then as I come out and as I go through that apex point, there's a little bit of a compression. We can be on full throttle, ride this thing out. We're going to go up and over the curbs and do everything you can. Don't dip a tire in the gravel because that will slow you down. But this is all considered track. No 1X for this. Use it. It extends the track so we can get a good run out through. The final corner here, turn 10, is just a good traditional sweeper. There's seemingly fewer and fewer of them in racing, especially modern racetracks. Old school tracks like this have these corners, these big sweepers. They've got bumps in them. They have character. This is one of the most fun portions on the track. When I was practicing for this and doing some laps, I was giggling through here because I forgot how much fun it is in a cup car at Summit Point going through the final corner. You get it right, you feel it, you smile, you laugh because you know you got it right. It's just a lot of fun. So enjoy it. The nice thing about this track is it's not a popular track on iRacing, but it's a lot of fun to race. So let's take a look at it a little bit more in depth, look at the telemetry. So as you can see, as I was discussing before, our brake pedal, much like turn 1, firm brake pedal in the beginning, and then we start bleeding it off. We only decrease the brake pedal as the steering starts to increase as well. We get to throttle, is a smooth application of throttle. You can see how early I've started to take up throttle, and then it's only a constant increase of throttle. You never want a situation where you've gone to throttle and come out of the throttle because you went to throttle too early and then go back to it. That's lost time. Everything should be like a squeeze on. So everything is just adding. Braking is the same way. You're subtracting. So nice, smooth slopes is always a good thing when you're analyzing your squiggly lines and your telemetry when you're going through corners. And then as we come out, we get a good run all the way down the front straight for another lap. So let's take a look and see what it looks like without all the stuff on the screen and without me starting and stopping. Let's go into the cockpit and take a look. So coming up into turn 1, break between the last and second to last. We're gonna nice late apex, keep it tight. Second gear coming out of the corner, keep it tight all the way around because turn 2 is a little bit of a kink. I'm gonna brake at the grass, off the brake, roll the speed through, modulate that throttle pedal, be ready for oversteer as you come through there. Off, coast a little bit of brake, mid-track, turn in, carousel, keep it nice and tight. Bill squirt a full throttle and then brake again. Another carousel, keep it nice and tight. Keep the steering angle consistent. Modulate the car with the throttle. Pinch turn 8 to open up turn 9, and then boom on the throttle when you can get into that compression point. Brake marker is going to be right there at the grass. Off the brakes, get on throttle early, and ride it out. There you go. That is a lap of Summit Point. They come quick. They come very fast. There is not a lot of time to rest on this particular track. In terms of passing zones, there's not very many of them. Passing zone 1 is turn 1 down here. So if we go back to our chase camera. So turn 1's great because it is kind of the widest. I mean, the whole track is the same width all the way around, but it feels the widest going into turn 1. Traditional braking zone, it's just threshold braking. Think turn 7 hotel at Sebring. It's that kind of idea. You're going as fast as the car will go on the track. You're going over 100, almost 160 miles an hour, and it's just who is braver going into this brake zone. A car on the inside is the optimal line through here because it's you're pinching or you're forcing the outside car to go around the outside. But just understand that you're going to have to slow the car more if you're on the inside. Over here, you will have to slow the car more than you would normally if you're online because you just can't take that angle at the same speed. That's fine because then you're on the apex and the car behind, if he tries to over and under you and you keep it tight, he can't drive through you into your rear. So that's how you complete the pass. If you're the outside car and you're coming through here, like I said earlier in this track walk, there is multiple lines through here. You can take a wide line through here. So you can displace this first one and ride around the outside. Make sure you practice it though before you do it. But if you do it, you carry more speed. You're traveling a further distance. That's why we don't do it if we're racing by ourselves. But if you are wheel to wheel and they're taking this tight line, you can keep it around the outside, force them on the inside, and carry more speed and carry it all the way through. Because then turn 3 is a left-hander. Turn 3, I don't like passing or sending anything into turn 3. It is difficult. If you go too wide into here and you're the outside car, the right car, give it up. Lift early, let the car on the inside go. Unless you're fighting for a really good position and it's at the very end of the race, taking this too wide tends to end in tears. What happens is the inside car, it's really bumpy down here on the inside, and a lot of times the inside car will misjudge how much it actually needs to slow down to get through here too wide. And when it does that, if the inside car misjudges it and they carry too much speed, guess where they're going to go? They're going to go wide and they're going to bounce into the outside car and push the outside car into the gravel. So if you're the outside car, you have all the risk here, frankly. If there's somebody alongside you and they're sending it in, I would just lift, let them go in. Feign maybe that you're going to go too wide, so take it all the way as deep as you can, but then pull out and tuck in behind. If he thinks you're still on the outside all the way and you're going to go too wide, he may overslow the car and go slowly through here, and then you can just over under on the way out. That's how I would handle it through there. Going into turn, what is this, turn 4 and 5? Yes. No, that was 4, 5. So this is 5, 6. So for turn 5, we want to make sure that we are, is it 5, 6? No, this is 4, 5. Okay, 4, 5. The turn for 4, 5, really good passing opportunity on the exit. If you get a good run through 3 and coming into 4, 5, you can send it on the outside. So carrying more speed, you'll end up all the way over here on track left and then trying to outbrake your opponent. Don't do it on the first lap because your tires are cold and they will not be able to handle it. But in the race, as you get more comfortable with the grip of the car, as the car gets lighter, you can send it out here and make a pass on somebody that is driving a traditional line, which means that trying to move the car all the way to the right in order to go left. And if they leave enough room, you can send it down the inside. If the car in front of you is taking the line that I kind of showed, which is like mid-track right around here, it's difficult to send it on the inside without causing a wreck. But if they're driving all the way over to the right and just giving you all this area, yes, you can definitely take that position pretty easily going through there. The crucial part, though, is when you bomb it through 4, that you have enough room going into 5 to slow it down. Don't forget that you have to slow down immediately as soon as you go through 4. The technical section, so 6 through 9, there's not really any passing here. If you're too wide with somebody through this section, it'll be fun. Don't get me wrong. It's going to be slow, incredibly slow. You're going to lose 2, maybe even 3 seconds to the field if you take this all too wide. So I stay online. Don't scrub that kind of speed, and look for a better place to pass. Another place where it can be extremely tempting to pass is coming into the final corner. I don't recommend it. It's easy to get a better run off somebody out of turn 9 and come up over this under the bridge and get a nose in to get about, to think about a pass going into the final corner. The problem with it is the final corner is so important that if you take it too wide, you are going to be slow all the way down the straightaway for somebody that's behind that's watching you guys fight. So not only are you going to be slow, then you are subjected to attack from behind if there's somebody behind you. I would much rather tuck in line, focus on getting a good run coming through the final corner on the guy I'm looking to pass, or the gal, and then draft them all the way down the straightaway and make a good pass into turn one, where it's much easier to make the pass. So it's tempting to pass into the final corner. If you pass into the final corner, and if this guy or gal is on top of their game, they will let you go and sacrifice your speed into the final corner. They will focus on getting a good run, draft you all the way down the front straight, and then repass you going into turn one because it's so easy to do. So pass into turn one, don't pass into the final corner. And with that, I think that's it. No rain this week, so we're out of the monsoon that is England, and driving back on American tracks and club tracks, which is always fun in a cup car. Good luck. I hope the season has been going well with you. If it hasn't been, don't get discouraged. Treat every race as a exhibition. If your points aren't where they want, or you're not fighting for a championship, there's no reason why you can't still race and have fun. Go out there, learn, build your racecraft, and just improve your skill. For those of you that are in contention, great job. Keep it up. You still got a lot of season left and a lot of tracks to run. Tracks like this can promote a little bit of chaos because they are so tight. So yeah, if you're on the outside looking in, you never know. The leaders may have a problem, or there may be a wreck up front, knocks them out, allows you to get some points relative to the guys in front. So just keep chugging. That's why we race, is because we never know the outcome. Other than that, enjoy it. I'll see you in a couple weeks when we go to the next race. But if you have any questions, reach out to me on Discord. My name is Chris Pies, as always. Thank you for watching. Wish I could have been there in person today for the classroom, but unfortunately I've got another commitment I've got to keep. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon and see you out on the track. Bye-bye.